Hey, amazing viewers, before we go into this riveting narrative, drop your location in the comments below. We love connecting with you all around the world. Also, if this is your first time here, press the subscribe button and join our incredible journey. Let's hit 10,000 subscribers this month together. Your support means everything. A hidden truth, the beginning of an ordinary day. The morning sun crept through the curtains of the Thompson household, casting soft golden light across the quiet kitchen. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the sizzling of bacon, filling the air with the comforting scent of routine. Sarah Thompson, a 42-year-old nurse with tired eyes but an unwavering heart, stood at the stove flipping pancakes while her youngest daughter, Lily, sat at the kitchen island, swinging her legs and chattering about her upcoming science fair. "Mom, can I make a model of the solar system instead of a volcano?" Lily asked, her freckled face alight with excitement. Sarah smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll work on it together after dinner." From upstairs, the soft creak of a bedroom door and the padding of bare feet signaled the arrival of Zoe, her 17-year-old eldest. Unlike Lily, Zoe was quieter in the mornings, graceful and composed. But today, something was off. She shuffled into the kitchen, dark hair falling messily over her shoulder, her usually bright blue eyes clouded with something Sarah couldn't quite place. "Morning, sweetheart," Sarah greeted, placing a plate in front of Zoe. "You feeling okay?" Zoe hesitated before picking up her fork, pushing the food around without eating. "Yeah, just tired. Lots of studying." Sarah frowned slightly. It wasn't unusual for Zoe to be stressed with finals approaching, but this was different. She had been distant for weeks, her laughter quieter, her presence heavier. "You sure that's all?" Sarah pressed, trying to keep her voice light. Zoe forced a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." But Sarah knew her daughter too well. Something was wrong. A flicker of suspicion. As breakfast wrapped up, Zoe grabbed her backpack from the chair and slung it over her shoulder. Sarah caught the way she hesitated, gripping the strap a little too tightly. "Don't forget you promised to help Lily with her English essay tonight," Sarah reminded her. Zoe nodded. "I remember." Lily beamed. "She's the best at writing. She always makes my stories sound like real books." Sarah saw it again, that flicker of something unreadable in Zoe's expression. Regret. Sadness. It disappeared just as quickly as it came. Zoe gave Lily a soft pat on the head before heading for the door. "Bye, Mom," she called over her shoulder. "Bye, sweetheart." As the door clicked shut behind her, Sarah stood frozen for a moment, a strange unease settling in her chest. Something about Zoe's demeanor felt heavy, like she was carrying a secret too big for her shoulders. The whisper of a mother's instinct. The day at Mercy General Hospital passed in a blur. As a nurse, Sarah had mastered the art of compartmentalizing. She had to, for the sake of her patients. But no matter how many IVs she changed, how many prescriptions she administered, or how many comforting words she offered, her mind kept drifting back to Zoe. "Elena," she said during a quick break, setting down her coffee cup with a sigh. "Have you ever had that feeling that something's wrong with your kid, but they won't tell you?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, her longtime friend and colleague, gave her a knowing look over the rim of her cup. "Teenagers, huh?" She chuckled. "One minute they're your best friend, the next, they're a locked diary with no key." Sarah exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "This feels different, though. Zoe's always been responsible. Lately, she's just off." Elena leaned in. "Have you checked her phone? Maybe something happened at school." Sarah shook her head. "I don't want to invade her privacy, but I can't just sit back and do nothing." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes we have to be the bad guy to be the good mom." Sarah wasn't sure what that meant just yet, but she knew one thing. She couldn't ignore her instincts. An unsettling discovery. That evening, Sarah arrived home just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in swirls of pink and orange. The house was unusually quiet when she walked in. "Lily," she called. "In my room," came the distant response. Sarah set down her purse and walked toward the kitchen, expecting to find Zoe helping with Lily's essay. But instead, her backpack was sitting on the chair. Zoe was nowhere in sight. Sarah hesitated. Her daughter never left her bag unattended. Something about it felt off. She glanced toward the stairs, listening for any sign of movement. Nothing. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she reached for the backpack. The photo that changed everything. Sarah unzipped the main compartment and started pulling out textbooks, a crumpled sweater, and some loose papers. Nothing unusual. Then, her fingers brushed against something stiff, a stack of photographs. She pulled them out and flipped through them, her heart pounding faster with each image. At first, they seemed ordinary. Pictures of Zoe with her friends, moments frozen in time. But then, her breath caught. One photo stood out. It was a picture of Zoe. But not just any picture. She was with someone Sarah didn't recognize. A man. Older. Too old. And the way he was looking at Zoe, it made Sarah's stomach turn. Her fingers trembled as she flipped the photo over. 2 words were scrawled in red ink. "Help me." Sarah's world tilted. Her heart slammed against her ribs as her mind raced through 100 different possibilities, each one worse than the last. Her hands were shaking as she reached for her phone. She dialed without thinking, her breath coming in ragged gasps. 911. "What's your emergency?" Sarah swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "It's my daughter. I think she's in danger." The calm before the storm. Sarah never imagined she'd be making this call. Not about Zoe. Not about her perfect, responsible, straight-A student daughter. But as she sat there, gripping the phone like a lifeline, staring at the horrifying message scribbled on the back of the photo, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever this was, it was bigger than she ever could have imagined. And she was already too late. The silent cry for help. The call that changed everything. Sarah Thompson had made countless 911 calls in her life, but never like this. As a nurse, she had called for emergency assistance for patients in crisis. She had spoken to dispatchers with calm precision, directing them to cardiac arrests, accidents, and life-threatening situations. But tonight, as she sat in her quiet kitchen with a photo trembling in her hands, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps, she was the one in crisis. Her daughter, her responsible, straight-A, always follow the rules Zoe, was in danger. And Sarah had no idea how bad it was. 911. "What's your emergency?" Sarah tried to steady her voice. "It's my daughter," she managed. She left a message. In her backpack. It's written on the back of a photo. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. "What does the message say?" Sarah swallowed hard, staring at the 2 words written in red ink on the back of the photograph. "Help me." The dispatcher's voice was firm but calm. "Where is your daughter now?" Sarah's gaze darted toward the empty staircase leading to Zoe's room. "She should be home by now," she whispered. "But she's not answering my calls." The weight of those words settled deep in her chest. Where was Zoe? A pause. Then, "Ma'am, do you believe your daughter is in immediate danger?" Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, trying to fight back the rising wave of panic. "I don't know," she admitted, "but something isn't right." Another pause. Then, the dispatcher's voice softened slightly. "We'll send an officer to your residence. In the meantime, do you have any idea who the man in the photo is?" Sarah's stomach twisted. The man. She turned the photo over again, taking in every detail. He was older, maybe mid-30s, with short cropped hair and a clean-shaven face. He stood too close to Zoe. His arm was wrapped around her shoulder, not in a friendly way, but with a possessiveness that made Sarah's skin crawl. "I don't know him," she whispered. and that terrified her more than anything. A mother's search for answers. Sarah barely heard the dispatcher's reassurances as she hung up. Her mind was already racing ahead, piecing together the fragments of information she had ignored for weeks. Zoe's distant behavior, the missed meals, the secretive texts, the unexplained withdrawals from Sarah's bank account. Her heart pounded as she rushed upstairs, throwing open Zoe's bedroom door. She had been too afraid to look before. Now she didn't have a choice. The room was perfectly tidy, just like always. But that was the problem. Zoe was a teenager. Teenagers weren't this neat. Sarah's eyes scanned the room, searching for something, anything, that might explain what was happening. Then her gaze landed on Zoe's nightstand drawer. Slowly, she pulled it open. Inside, buried beneath a pile of old notebooks, was a burner phone. Sarah's breath caught. Zoe didn't own a second phone. Her hand shook as she powered it on. It was locked. But then, a notification popped up. One new message. Sarah clicked it open. Her blood ran cold. Unknown number. Meet me at the warehouse. Midnight. Don't be late. Sarah's fingers tightened around the phone. What the hell was going on? The stranger in the shadows. The sound of tires on gravel sent Sarah bolting to the window. A police cruiser pulled into the driveway, its headlights cutting through the darkness. The red and blue emergency lights were off. This wasn't a full-scale emergency. Not yet. A tall officer in his late 40s stepped out of the car. His uniform was crisp, his expression unreadable. He approached the front door and knocked twice. Sarah forced herself to take a steadying breath before opening it. Mrs. Thompson. Yes. The officer's badge glinted in the dim porch light. I'm Officer Harris. We received your call about your daughter. Sarah stepped aside. Please, come in. Harris followed her into the kitchen, his gaze immediately locking onto the photo on the table. Sarah wasted no time. My daughter is missing, she said, the panic slipping into her voice. She didn't come home from school, and I found this in her backpack. Harris studied the photo carefully before flipping it over. His expression darkened when he read the words. How long has she been acting strangely? He asked. Sarah swallowed hard. A few weeks. She's been distant, distracted. And I just found this. She handed him the burner phone, her stomach twisting. It has a message telling her to meet someone at a warehouse at midnight. Harris's entire demeanor changed. He pulled out his own phone and made a quick call. This just became a priority case. I need backup. Sarah's heart pounded. You think she's in danger? Harris looked at her, his expression grim. Yes, and if we don't act fast, we might lose her. A race against time. Sarah had never felt more powerless. She stood in the middle of her kitchen, watching as Officer Harris made more calls, coordinating with other officers. The words human trafficking and organized crime were mentioned, and each one landed like a hammer against her chest. Her mind screamed in protest. No, this can't be real. Not Zoe. But the photo, the message, the burner phone, they all told a different story. Mrs. Thompson, Harris said, pulling her back to reality. Do you have access to your daughter's social media accounts? Sarah froze. No, but she hesitated. She sometimes uses the family computer. Harris nodded. Show me. Sarah led him to the small home office, where an old desktop computer sat against the wall. Harris sat down, fingers flying across the keyboard. He opened Zoe's email, then checked her sent messages. One stood out. Sent to an anonymous email address just 2 days ago. Subject, I'm scared. I don't know how to get out. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Harris read the message aloud. Please don't be mad. But I didn't know what else to do. I made a mistake. I thought he was helping me, but I was wrong. He won't let me leave. If anything happens to me, tell my mom I love her. Sarah swayed, gripping the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Harris immediately stood, his voice sharp. We need to go. Now. Sarah barely heard him. All she could hear were the words repeating in her head. He won't let me leave. Her daughter wasn't just missing. She was trapped. And Sarah had no idea how much time she had left to save her. The warehouse at midnight. A mother's worst fear. Sarah Thompson had spent her entire life believing she could protect her daughters. She had kissed their scraped knees, checked for monsters under their beds, and reassured them that the world was full of good people. But now, as she gripped the edge of the desk in her small home office, reading her daughter's desperate email, she realized that the world she had always believed in was a lie. Zoe was in danger. Real, horrifying danger. He won't let me leave. The words were burned into her mind, searing into her chest, like a wound that would never heal. Officer Harris was already moving, his voice sharp as he spoke into his radio. We need units at the abandoned warehouse on 5th and Arlington. Suspected minor involved. Potential human trafficking case. This is a priority. Sarah's vision blurred. Human trafficking? No, that wasn't possible. That wasn't Zoe. Her daughter was smart, responsible, careful. How could this have happened? Harris's voice cut through the haze. Mrs. Thompson, I need you to stay here. Sarah snapped her head up. What? This is a dangerous situation, Harris continued. We have officers en route. You need to let us handle it. Sarah's heartbeat thundered in her ears. You want me to sit here, while my daughter is out there, terrified and alone? Harris hesitated. I understand. But these men, whoever they are dangerous. We don't know how deep this goes. Sarah's fingernails dug into her palms. Zoe was out there, in some cold, dark place, waiting for a rescue that might not come fast enough. Waiting for her mother, waiting for someone to save her. And Sarah had never been the type to just sit and wait. A mother on a mission. Sarah didn't remember grabbing her car keys. She didn't remember storming past Officer Harris, ignoring his orders, ignoring everything but the desperate, single-minded thought pounding in her chest. Find her. Find her now. The streets blurred as she drove. The city lights streaked past in a haze of gold and red, but Sarah only saw the road ahead. She knew exactly where the warehouse was. It had been abandoned for years, a skeletal structure on the edge of town, a place no one would go, unless they had something to hide. She pressed the gas harder. She had no plan, no backup, no idea what she was walking into. But none of that mattered, because Zoe was inside that warehouse, and nothing on this earth would stop Sarah from getting to her. The warehouse at midnight. The warehouse loomed before her, its broken windows like empty eyes staring into the night. Sarah killed the engine and slipped out of the car, heart pounding. The air smelled like rust, dust, and something rotten. She moved cautiously, pressing herself against the cold metal wall. Think, Sarah, think. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't a fighter. But she was a mother, and mothers didn't give up. She edged toward a side door, her breath shallow. A faint glow of light leaked from inside. Then, voices. Low, rough voices. Men. Talking. Her stomach twisted. She wasn't alone. She reached for her phone, her fingers slick with sweat. Harris had to be close by now. She quickly typed out a message. I'm here. I see them. A response came instantly. Stay put. Do not go inside. We're almost there. Sarah's grip tightened around the phone. She knew she should listen. But then, a scream. A girl's scream. Zoe. Sarah's entire body went cold. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She threw open the door and ran inside. The truth in the darkness. The inside of the warehouse was a maze of crates and broken machinery. Dim, flickering bulbs cast long, jagged shadows across the walls. Sarah moved fast, her breath sharp and controlled. Then she saw them. 3 men. One was leaning against a crate, his arms crossed. The second was pacing. The third, the man from the photo. He was gripping Zoe's arm, pulling her forward. Zoe's face was pale, her wrists bound. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for a way out. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Let her go," she screamed. The men whipped around. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the man from the photo, the one who had taken Zoe, tilted his head. "Well, well," he murmured, his voice dripping with amusement. "Look who came to join the party." Zoe gasped. "Mom." Sarah's entire chest ached. Her daughter, her baby, looked so small. But there was no time for fear. "Let her go, right now." Sarah's voice was steady, despite the terror clawing at her throat. The man smirked. "Or what?" Sarah clenched her fists. "You're going to have a lot of problems in about 30 seconds. The man laughed. "Oh, and why's that?" A sound cut through the air. A siren. A man's smirk vanished. Sarah exhaled shakily. Harris had arrived. The pacing man cursed. The one leaning against the crate straightened. The man from the photo yanked Zoe closer. "You called the cops." Sarah took a step forward. "I called everyone." The final stand. The warehouse erupted into chaos. The front doors slammed open, and officers poured in. Shouting. Movement. A blur of bodies and weapons drawn. Sarah barely registered any of it. All she saw was Zoe. The man tightened his grip, dragging Zoe backward. Sarah lunged. She didn't think. She didn't care. She grabbed onto Zoe and yanked her away. The man cursed, stumbling back as officers tackled him to the ground. Zoe collapsed into Sarah's arms. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Sarah felt her daughter breathe. Tears blurred her vision. She held Zoe so tightly it hurt. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." Zoe was shaking, crying, but she was alive. And that was all that mattered. The aftermath. The warehouse faded into the background. The police, the handcuffs, the flashing lights, none of it mattered. Sarah sat on the curb, arms wrapped around Zoe, stroking her hair. Harris knelt beside them. "She's safe now," he said softly. Sarah nodded, but she already knew that. Zoe clung to her. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do." Sarah cupped her face. "You didn't have to know," she said. "I would have found you, no matter what." Zoe's breath hitched, and for the first time, she let herself believe it. Sarah kissed the top of her head. "It's over now," she whispered, and for the first time in a long time. Zoe believed that too. The road to healing. After the storm. The flashing lights of police cruisers painted streaks of red and blue against the abandoned warehouse. Officers moved in and out of the building, securing evidence, handcuffing the men who had nearly stolen Zoe away forever. The air was thick with the scent of oil, dust, and fear. Sarah Thompson sat on the curb, arms wrapped tightly around her daughter, unwilling to let go. She could feel Zoe's small, shuddering breaths against her chest. The terror was still there, lingering like smoke after a fire. But Zoe was safe. And that was all that mattered. Officer Harris crouched beside them, his voice gentle but firm. "The men are in custody. We'll need your statements, but we can handle that later." Sarah barely heard him. She was too busy memorizing this moment. The feel of Zoe's warmth, the sound of her breathing, the simple fact that she was here. Alive. "Come on," Harris continued. "Let's get you both home." Sarah nodded, her grip on Zoe tightening for just a second longer before she finally let herself breathe. The quiet aftermath. The drive home was silent. Zoe sat curled in the passenger seat, wrapped in a police-issued blanket, staring out the window. She hadn't spoken since they left the warehouse. Sarah didn't push. Instead, she just drove, letting the weight of the night settle between them. When they finally pulled into the driveway, the porch light flickered on, casting a soft glow across the front yard. Inside, Lily was asleep, blissfully unaware of the nightmare her mother and sister had just survived. Sarah turned off the carb, but didn't move. Neither did Zoe. The silence stretched. Then, finally, "I'm sorry," Zoe whispered. Sarah's throat tightened. She turned to face her daughter, taking in the dark circles under her beautiful blue eyes, the faint tremor in her fingers, the way she curled in on herself, as if trying to disappear. "Sweetheart," Sarah said softly, "none of this is your fault." Zoe let out a shaky breath. "But I—" "No," Sarah interrupted, reaching for her daughter's hands. "You don't have to carry this alone." Tears welled in Zoe's eyes. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I was smart enough, strong enough." Her voice cracked. "But I was wrong." Sarah squeezed her hands. "You were never alone," she said, "and you never will be." Zoe swallowed hard. "I should have told you sooner." Sarah smiled sadly. "And I should have asked harder." For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Zoe let herself lean into her mother's embrace. And for the first time in just as long, she felt safe. A new beginning. The days that followed were a blur of interviews, therapy appointments, and restless nights. Sarah sat with Zoe through every police statement, every retelling of the nightmare she had lived through. She held Zoe's hand as she described the grooming, the manipulation, the fear, and she never let go. Neither did Zoe. It wasn't easy. Healing never was. There were nights when Zoe woke up screaming. Nights when Sarah found her curled in the hallway outside Lily's door, as if just knowing her little sister was safe would help her sleep. There were days when Zoe barely spoke. Days when she did nothing but sit on the back porch, staring at the sky, as if searching for something she had lost. But slowly, so slowly it was almost impossible to notice, she began to come back. A real smile here. A laugh there. A moment of lightness in the darkness that had once threatened to consume her. And Sarah held on to those moments. Tightly. Because she had almost lost her daughter once. She refused to lose her again. 1 year later, the 1-year anniversary of that night came and went quietly. There were no dramatic breakdowns. No tears, no nightmares. Just a quiet dinner at home. Lily chattered excitedly about school. Zoe teased her about her latest science project. Sarah sat back and watched, her heart so full it hurt. Later that night, as she tucked Lily into bed, Zoe lingered in the doorway. "Mom." Sarah turned, waiting. Zoe hesitated, then stepped forward. She was stronger now. Still healing, still fighting, but stronger. She wrapped her arms around Sarah and held on. "Thank you," she whispered. Sarah swallowed past the lump in her throat. "For what?" "For never giving up on me." Sarah pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. That was never an option. Zoe smiled. And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.